in readings. But
Absolutely.
certainly at this, in this way, at least you can invite. Um, we've had two poets from Ireland. Um, we had John Eppel recently, who's a
Wow.
wonderful poet who lives in Bulawayo,
Okay.
but came from South Africa originally. Um,
Okay, at least Zoom gets rid of the distances, if nothing else.
in some distances, yes, absolutely.
I mean, to get someone from Ireland and he's right there.
Yeah.
So at least that helps. Okay, are there any poets in Cape Town that you would say people should look out for?
Wow.
Apart
Yes.
from Ed and yourself.
So I think I'll probably kick myself tomorrow because of names I've forgotten. But I would say Fionnuala Dowling is a particularly fine poet, accessible to read, but absolutely haunting, thought-provoking. Someone who really engages every part of the reader. Mike Cope, I think, is a very very fine poet. Those are people who occur to me as particularly strong.
Okay. And people like, have you ever tried to contact someone like Brayton?
I wrote to his agent once, but yeah, I look in the inbox every day.
I think he's too busy.
I think he's busy, and
and he lives in Spain, I believe.
I think is he in Spain? I thought he was in France part of the time, but it could be.
I think he's based in Spain.
He goes to Wellington, I know, sometimes.
Yeah, he's usually in a thing called Digtersfees.
That's right.
Around this time, but I think with COVID this year's one.
Yeah.
There isn't a Digtersfees as such, but he might come out.
Yes.
It's one of my greatest ambitions to speak to him.
Yeah. Yeah, I also have a great fondness for him. He was such an influence on my work and also on my thinking. He brought so much to Afrikaans literature in terms of surrealism, putting things together that you wouldn't normally put together.
Yeah.
He made all of us curious about Zen at a time when that wasn't in the consciousness.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the political dimension of his work, which is terribly important.
That's what puts some people off, that it's too political.
Well,
the same with Ankie Krog.
Yeah. Well, I think that that could be a long conversation, but I think because of the way politicians talk about politics, it's easy for ordinary people to get tired of politics and to see those conversations as unproductive and sort of circular.
Yeah.
But I think when poets talk about politics, they are trying to, generally, if they do it well, they are trying to reimagine the world in a different image. And that, I think, is very important. Okay. So then, those poets are then in a tradition of people like Brecht and Neruda, who wrote love poetry and also political stuff, and show that the political and the private are really two sides of the same coin.
Who I really admire, is probably my favorite poet, is Bukowski.
I do love Bukowski.
Because there's politics in there, but you wouldn't say so because he's just describing everyday life.
Bukowski, yes, he's a sly poet, I think, because he put in more work than he laid on, but he
very sharp mind.
Very sharp, and I think he really, the way he looks at himself sometimes with tenderness and sometimes with a kind of self-loathing. I think he's a very good poet to read.
On that note, he's very similar to Sylvia Plath, who was very depressed.
I hadn't thought
most
of
of the
that.
time.
I hadn't thought of that. Of that
Sylvia
connection.
Plath,
Yes.
if you read a lot of Sylvia Plath,
Mm.
when you're finished, you're depressed.
Yeah, you get that.
Leonard Cohen as well.
Yeah, you get that. You with Bukowski, there's that kind of,
it's like black humor almost.
Yeah,
in like
Bukowski, there's a great sort of joy of life. You think of him as impetuous and pleasure loving, and yet
when I finish
sadness.
reading Bukowski, I'm in a good mood. Always.
Yeah. Yes.
Sylvia Plath, not so much.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yes, I think Bukowski will continue to influence, but there's a very fine poet who started in the Western Cape, lives in Makanda now, Nathan Trantau.
Okay.
He writes in Kaapse Afrikaans.
I'd love to hear that.
He's a very wonderful poet, and he says he's influenced by Bukowski, among others. And he's very, very worth reading.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
You know, I had the pleasure of meeting through Simon, and I found him very deep, is Adam Small.
Wow.
But all his poetry was political, based on the struggle.
And also very personal, you know, very personal as well. I think there's an intimacy to his poems. If I think of an example now, if I think of lines like die Here het geskommel en die dice het verkeerd geval vir ons.
Yeah.
Those, he seems to be speaking for many people there, or a group of people. But those lines for me have a great personal resonance.
Yeah, but they can come across as very bitter at times.
Yeah.
At times, not all the time.
Yes. I think it's possible to do both. It's possible to write. Yeah, if you think of Bob Dylan's protest songs that he's still so remembered for, some of those songs are very personal. I think you can do both. Not everyone can do it. If I try to write a protest poem, it usually flops. But the people who can do it, and I think Adam Small could do it well.
I think you must have been in that situation. You can't write a song about struggling when you're not struggling. That's why that's why I once heard from someone, white people can't sing the blues.
Yes,
because they haven't been through that struggle.
I can see why people would. I mean, I think there are great white blues singers, but I understand why people would ask that question. It's not a trivial question, you know. I'm trying to think of my other favorite Cape Town poets, but and they will come to me. There are definitely
published poets. Okay, well, we can get back to that.
Yeah.
Off the top of your head, could you read us one of your poems, just something short?
Maybe I should read you. It's not very long. Maybe I should read you the poem I wrote that recently won the AFBOB, the Afrikaans section of the AFBOB Poetry Prize.
That would be amazing.
And I'll read you. Shall I read you the Afrikaans? Shall I read you the English translation of it, maybe?
Or you can read both, if you like. Which is the original in Afrikaans?
The Afrikaans was original, yeah.
Okay.
Shall I read that first?
Yes, okay.
Doepa vir alleenigheid. Maar daardie aand het ons diep gesels, die bottel leeg gedrink. En ons het gekla dat die wêreld te nou was rondom ons. Onthou jy nog? Later, baie later het dit begin reën en ons was bly ons het die deur lankal toegemaak. Ons het ons begin verbeel ons kon kies wat ons inlaat, wat buite bly. Maar jy was mos altyd boer gewees en ek 'n intellektueel. Wat ons gedeel het, Jim Morrison se stem wat ons beveel om deur te breek tot ander kant die stilte, ander kant vroomheid en bravado en die koddige oudtydse sekerhede. Maar die volgende oggend op die bakkie, op pad na jou ma se huis toe, hangover en nog half deur die slaap, het ons niks gesê nie. Liewe neef, wat sal ek doen met hierdie verskrikking? Die onverstaanbare geweld waarmee jy hier weg is. Weg is, voor ek nog kon vra, watter sterk doepa het jy toe ooit gekry vir die alleenigheid? Was daar toe ooit regtig 'n keuse oor wat ons binnelaat en wat nie? Ek sit maar hierdie woorde neer vir jou in die oop grond van Afrikaans. Vergewe my al die stiltes wat ek nie kon oopsing nie. Net nog een ding. Ek hoop daar was liefde en vreugde tussen in die chaos en die vrees wat soveel van ons erfporsie is. Ek hoop jou oë het al die mooi dinge onthou wat hulle ooit gesien het voor die einde.
Very good.
I'll read the English one.
Okay.
Dupa for loneliness. But that